The internet is always changing, always evolving. And most of the time, these little upgrades happen so smoothly, so quietly in the background that we don't even notice. Things just get a bit faster, a little safer. Well, another one of those upgrades is on the way. And even though it sounds like a tiny technical detail, it actually tells us a whole lot about how our digital world keeps moving forward. So let's get into it. Okay, let's just cut right to the chase, right? The big question on your mind, on this specific date, December 15th, 2025, is this change going to break your internet? It's a pretty direct question, so you deserve a direct answer. And here's the good news. For pretty much everyone listening, the answer is a big, resounding no. So you can breathe easy. But I really think you should stick around because the story behind why this is all happening is a really fascinating peek under the hood of the internet. We're talking privacy, progress, and the incredible challenge of keeping this global network running for all of us. So what is actually changing? Well, we're talking about a very specific piece of internet tech that's heading into retirement. Let's break down what it is and, why it even matters in the first place. It all comes down to something called DNS over HTTPS, or just DOH for short. Now, every time you type a website into your browser, your computer has to do a quick DNS lookup to find that site's actual numerical address on the internet. For the longest time, this was like shouting that address across a crowded room. Anyone could listen in. DOH completely changes the game. That analogy of putting the request inside a sealed, private envelope, it's perfect. It encrypts the whole thing so nobody can snoop on your connection and see what websites you're visiting. It's a huge, huge win for our privacy. So here's the key detail. A really popular privacy-focused DNS service called Quad9 is the one making the change. They're going to stop supporting an older version of this DOH protocol, specifically the version that runs on an old web standard called HTTP/11. That's it. That's the core of this entire story. All right, so that's the what. Now for the part you've been waiting for, the who. Let's take a look at which devices, if any, might actually have a problem when this old protocol gets switched off for good. Okay, take a look at this. It really lays it all out. That safe column on the left, that's almost everybody. Seriously, if you're using Chrome, Firefox, Safari, any modern browser, if you're on Android or iOS, a Mac or a PC, you are totally fine. Your software has been using the newer, better standard for years now. The only potential trouble spots are over on the right. We're talking about really old, outdated software or some very specific types of hardware. And this really shows you just how small and specific this group is. The main hardware we know is affected is a brand of routers called Microtech. And even then, it's only if someone has manually set them up to use this specific privacy service. And what's really interesting is that the data shows a whole bunch of these connections are coming from Brazil, which suggests there's a community of users there who might be relying on this exact configuration. So this gets us to a really fundamental question in the world of tech. Why would you make a change that might disconnect even a tiny number of people? It's that classic battle, right? Supporting the way things used to be versus building for a better future. Exactly. This is the question, isn't it? If it's not broken, why fix it? The old way still works, so why go through all the trouble of shutting it down? You'd think the whole point of the internet is to keep everything working with everything else. And honestly, that's a totally fair question. And the answer, well, it's all about the massive difference between the old and the new. HTTP/1.1, the old way, is perfectly described as a single-lane country road. Yeah, it'll get you there, but it's slow, it gets jammed up easily. But HTTP/2, which has been the recommendation since way back in 2018, is like a multi-lane superhighway. It's just faster, way more efficient, and built for how we actually use the internet today. At some point, you have to stop maintaining that old country road because it's holding everyone else back. And there are some really good reasons for this. For one, the software needed to even support the old protocol is basically at its end of life. Keeping it around actually slows the whole system down for everybody else. It can introduce weird security risks, and it just eats up developer time that could be spent on new, better things. For a small team trying to provide a service to the entire world, focusing on modern, efficient code isn't just a good idea, it's the only way to survive. But this totally logical decision creates this fascinating problem. It's a problem that's pretty unique to a service that's built from the ground up to protect your privacy. Wow, this quote just nails it. It's a double-edged sword. The number one feature that makes a privacy service so great, the fact that they promise not to track you, suddenly becomes their biggest problem. They can't just send an email blast or a notification to the people who are affected. Why? Because they have no idea who they are. Just think about that for a second. It's a real paradox, right? How do you send a critical warning to the very people you have promised never to identify? It's wild. It means they have to do things the old-fashioned way, write blog posts, talk to the media, and just hope that the message manages to find its way to the right people before the deadline. So on the very slim chance that you are one of the people in this small group, maybe you have one of those routers and you set it up yourself, what should you do? Let's walk through the solutions. Okay, you've got three main options. By far, the best thing to do is number one, update your device's software. Hopefully the manufacturer has an update that uses the modern standard. Option two is also great. Just switch to a different but equally secure encryption method called DNS over TLS. It's not part of this change at all. And then there's the last resort, number three, which is to go back to the old unencrypted way. You can do it, but it's a real step backwards for your privacy and security. And let's put that date on the calendar one last time. December 15th, 2025, that's the day the switch gets flipped. So if you think you might be affected, that's your deadline to get things sorted out. When you step back, this whole thing is really more than just a story about one protocol. It's a little snapshot of how the internet has to keep evolving to get better. And it really leaves you with a much bigger question to chew on. What other old, creaky pieces of code are out there, quietly holding our digital world together, just waiting for their own retirement party?